This is Combat365.tv. Like and subscribe for more hard-hitting combat sports content. Andreas, Georgiou backstage at the climax of Glory 54, now joined by Glory's very own Georgiou. Georgiou, main event there. Rico Verhoeven, unanimous decision against Mladen Brestovac. The talk in the build-up was, can Rico capitalise on the previous fight and get the knockout? He didn't do that here tonight. It was a solid performance from Rico, but it certainly wasn't an easy performance from him. What were your initial assessments of that?
I think the first thing you have to take away from Rico's win tonight is he set 4 new records. 4 new records in one fight, and was it the most blistering Rico Verhoeven performance you've ever seen? No, but still, 4 new records is incredible. Rico is a once-in-a-lifetime athlete. Rico Verhoeven is right now the best stand-up fighter on the planet, bar none. Bar none. There is no heavyweight on the world that can touch Rico Verhoeven in a stand-up fight. None. So he now holds the records for most Glory title defense. 7 title defenses. He was even with Robin van Riesmalen for 16 wins in Glory. He's now bested van Riesmalen. He's got 17 wins in Glory. He is the longest reigning Glory champion. And what was the 4th? Longest reigning Glory champion and most overall wins. Yeah. So
he's smashing it, absolutely, and then there's no question why he is the poster boy of this promotion, because every single time it's Rico Verhoeven leading the line, smashing every single record there is. Where do we look now? Look, I mean, Brestovac was no slouch. He put up a decent performance, but it's another win for Rico Verhoeven. That's 2 over Brestovac now. You look at the rest of the division, and even ask Rico, I say, you've cleared everyone out. Who's next? He goes, anybody. But the question is who? Because, he's cleared everyone.
That's, talent operations. That's a question for the people in Glory talent operations. He's dominant. Rico is dominant. That's a question I can't answer. Yeah. Who does Rico fight next? I don't know. It's a tough one. Rico is so good. He's so good.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to see that Badr Hari fight. I know I'd like to see that rematch. I don't know anything more than you do or Rico does. Whether we're going to see that. But aside from that, yeah, it's a question for talent operations, and they're working hard on it. Rico wants to stay busy. He's incredibly dominant, but he wants to stay busy. He's always looking for new challenges and new territories. That's another thing with Rico. Like you see, he headlined the card tonight in the UK, Glory's first UK event in 5 years. Those are also challenges. Going into a new market and being the poster boy is a challenge. Yeah. That's a lot of pressure. And Rico is a guy that the more pressure people give him, the more he loves it. He's got a huge appetite for pressure. Mm-hmm. So those kind of challenges are also interesting to him, So
I said this the other day. I was like, I just wish we had this guy during the prime K1 era. I would have loved to have seen the matchups that were potentially there. What does he have to do right now? Because I think he's pretty much almost there, but the discussion is always going to be nullified by the fact he came at almost a generation too late. Is he the greatest heavyweight kickboxer of all time? It's such a great question.
You're trying to get me hurt in the YouTube comment. Well, honestly, despite the fact that I work for Glory, I have this conversation with a lot of people, and it's a fascinating question for me. If you take Rico and put him in, the old K1 days of the Final 8, when everyone was in the prime, Sefo, Ertz, Hunt, the Banner, how does he do? I think he does pretty well. If you look at Rico, he's a natural heavyweight. He's an enormous human being. Absolutely. Massive, tree trunks for legs, but he moves like a middleweight. It's a cliche, a heavyweight who moves like a middleweight, but he really does. For a big man, he moves beautifully. He's so agile, he boxes so intelligently. I think his boxing skills are superior to, with all due respect, any of the guys who fought in the classic 8-man tournament days. He's got better boxing, better head movement, he's defensively tighter, and people look back with rose-tinted glasses, and I no disrespect to the guys back then. They're all legends and all tough, but I think that Rico possibly doesn't get the credit that he deserves. I think that if you could transport him back in time and place him in one of those Final 8s, I think he would shock a lot of people. He would be right up there. And the thing with Final 8 tournaments as well is there's a lot of luck involved. It depends. You might injure yourself crashing your shins into somebody else's shin, and then there's a lot of luck involved in winning an 8-man tournament. So
if we ever get a time machine, that's what I'm doing. I'm taking him to the K1 days.
I'm right there with you, front row, 100%. I would really love to see that. Yeah. That's a really interesting question, and it's something that I've asked when I've spoken to guys like Ernesto Hoost. I've asked Ernesto, Remy Bonyaski, Jerome Labana, loads of different people when I've encountered them through, you know, how would you think Rico would have done? And they all say he would have done good. You know, they all think he would have been right up there. There's nobody ever says, no, he couldn't hang. Yeah. So, yeah, I would definitely put some money on him. Yeah.
Well, we can't find that out. But what we do know is he is the best heavyweight on the planet right now. There's no questions there.
Yeah. I mean, of any stand-up discipline, you know, in a stand-up under our rules, in a stand-up fight that's allows punches, kicks, and knees, who can touch him? Stipe Miocic couldn't do it. Anthony Joshua couldn't do it. Deontay Wilder couldn't do it. Tyson Fury, I won't say because they're good friends, you know, so we'll leave that one alone. But no,
he was actually saying to Gareth he'd like to fight Tyson.
I know, I heard that. He said he would do it. It'd be a fun fight. But yeah, he's the best stand-up fighter on the planet right now. The best heavyweight stand-up fighter, and also I think he has to be there in the pound-for-pound conversation.
Yep. Without a doubt. We could talk about Rico Verhoeven all day because he's just, you know, he's such a polarising character in the sense of what if and if he did this, but, you know, we will digress, we will move forward. There was another title fight tonight, Alim Nabiev and Harit Grigorian. There was a bit of a shocked reaction, kind of, if you were predicting in beforehand and what we actually got there tonight. I think it was a very, very solid fight, actually.
Man, I think a lot of people underestimated Harit. Because you look at Nabiev, if you go right back into Nabiev's career, when he started out fighting in Russia with the W5 Russian organisation, then he's kind of come up through the Russian ranks. He was fighting with Legend, then he went to China, had some fights, then came into Glory. He's been on a very, very steady upward trajectory, you know, and he's been beating people and he's been beating them comfortably. He's only lost a couple of times. And then he comes into Glory, you know, he beats Nicky Holzken, outclasses Nicky Holzken.
Yeah. And he was completely under the radar in that fight as well.
This guy's come completely out of left field. You know, beats Jimmy Vino, who's not a known guy, fair enough. But then next fight, he's calling for Nicky Holzken, and people are thinking, this guy's biting off more than he can chew. Holzken wasn't in the fight. Again, no disrespect, but you know, Nabiev dominated him. That shocked a lot of people. Then he fights Dumbe, and people say, well, you know, he's not going to out Dumbe. Dumbe is the craftiest guy in the roster, and he's going to come unstuck. He didn't. He out Dumbe. Then he goes into the Harit fight, and then people are thinking, oh, Harit's a bit one-dimensional. You know, he throws bombs, but Nabiev's going to be too crafty. And actually, you know, we saw some craftiness from Harit, but also when Harit puts one of those bombs on you, you know, like they say, no plan survives contact with the enemy, right? And I think that Harit caught him quite early with one of his big bombs, and a lot of the plans went out the window at that point. Yeah, so all respect to Harit. You know, I think people underestimated him, and I hope that tonight's win earns him a bit more respect.
I think he's the most underrated Glory champion currently.
Harit is a windmill with like sledgehammers instead of wind thing, you know. He just stands in front of you and he just batters you, and he breaks you physically and mentally. And it's a simple game plan, but it's very, very effective. But also, you know, there was a lot. He introduced some sort of movement and lateral movement, and there was fighting intelligence there tonight that I think people don't think that Harit has. And it was a very nice showcase for Harit. Very interesting, and you know, that's an interesting division. That welterweight division's a war zone. That's a hot potato, that belt. So even making a defence of the belt in the welterweight climate at the moment is an impressive thing in itself. So I'm pleased for Harit. And obviously Nabiev's going to come back round. You know, he's such a high level guy. You know, he's far from over.
We'll move on now. There was a lot more fights here in Birmingham. One of them that has seemed to have created a small amount of controversy, perhaps, Bailey Sugden against Ulyanov. What happens in the fight, of course, for those who haven't seen it, is Ulyanov goes for a sweep, which is illegal technically under Glory rule set, and there's a clash of heads in that moment, which causes a deep cut over his right eye. Doctor says no, and the referee waves it off. Dean Sugden is arguing that is not a no contest because a no contest indicates an unintentional foul, and he's trying to say that Nabiev, due to the fact he initiated a sweep, was intentional. It's an absolute minefield, and you know, I know there is no definitive answer right there. I guess the only way to resolve that is just by doing the rematch.
I think that I would have to go back and rewatch the tape, but I remember watching the instant replay in the arena, and before the sweep came from a clinch, and Bailey was on the way in, and Ulyanov caught hold of him, and I think the clash of heads might have been there, which was maybe a 50-50 responsibility. You know, I'm not sure that the cut was caused when they fell, but I would need to go back and watch the tape. You know, that it all happened very quickly. It is unfortunate that it ended in a no contest, especially as you know, Bailey was doing so well on home soil. There was a lot of pressure on Bailey's shoulders as well. Bailey Sugden was one of the guys who was getting a lot of attention.
He's one of the biggest ticket sellers for this event.
Yeah, there was a lot of weight on Young's shoulders, and he carried it very, very well. A lot of pressure on him. And he also, you know, was one of the faces of this event, and he carried that off very, very well. And it was a big occasion for him, and it's a shame that it ended in a no contest in a fight that, up to that point, you know, he was winning. He's interested in doing the rematch if it comes around. I'm sure we'll see that down the line. But also, he said he just wants to get back in there as soon as possible. And we've got events coming up in New York, Denver, Chicago. So I think, you know, he's going to look to be getting on one of those US cards. But again, that's a question for talent operations when we see him again. But I think he'll be back soon. He's got no injuries. No,
definitely. He came in smiling, obviously a bit frustrated, but ready to go again. So Bailey Sugden, regardless, the train continues for him because he's so young and there is so much hype around him.
Yeah, he's so young. He knows he's got time. You know, so he's not. He's upset, but he's not too upset because he knows he's coming up. And again, he's a guy who, if you watch his trajectory and sort of, you know, consider his future, then I think he's a guy who's got a very bright future, and he knows it, and he's got time. So it's a setback, but it's not the end of the world, I think.
Agreed, completely. Let's close this out now. What else impressed you on this card? Who else impressed you, in fact? And yeah, any names that really stick out for you tonight? For me, it was Josh Jauncey. I thought he had a great performance. Jamie Bates did well against Tommy King. Your names?
I would agree. I think you know, Josh Jauncey continues to impress. He's it was I know a great pleasure for him to get that rematch win over Bayer after that loss at Glory 35. Again, you know, a lot of pressure on Jauncey going into that fight. There was a lot on his mind because he really wanted to get that win back, and now he has, and he's now riding a 2-fight win streak, and I think he's looked exceptional in both. You know, his form is really good right now, and afterward he said he wants to fight Sitchai.
Yes.
He wants that rematch with Sitchai. You know, whether he can go into that next, I don't know. You know, he might have to win some other matches. But what he's looking for right now, Jauncey said he wants rematches. He wants to avenge losses because he says he had some things going on at the time in some of those losses that weren't a fair reflection of who he is. So now he's in good form, and he's looking to get those wins back. So yeah, let's see what happens.
Yeah. Overall, I mean, it's frustrating. We had a lot of decisions tonight, and maybe it wasn't exactly the best card from a neutral perspective for those who can't appreciate the true kickboxing element. But overall, I think this was kind of what we should have expected for the first event in a market after 5 years. Would have been nicer with some more finishes, but it definitely, in my opinion, wasn't necessarily a bad card for Glory.
No, I don't think it was a bad card at all. I think when you see a lot of decisions, what you see is very even matchmaking. You know. There were no lopsided fights on that card tonight, and all the people in the ring tonight could, you know, more than hold their own. Even though, you know, I was impressed. Like, some of the Brits came away with losses making their debuts, but you've got to bear in mind that they're making their debuts largely against opposition with much more experience on the European circuit, which is kind of the highest level circuit in the world. So it's a little bit akin to when the Brits were breaking through into sort of UFC ranks, and they were coming up against Americans with all that kind of wrestling background, and then it took time to you know, overcome that gap in experience. And I think that, you know, we've got a solid Muay Thai scene here. UK strikers are some of the best in the world, as they've proved in boxing and mixed martial arts. And you'll see that in kickboxing in the coming years. You just need some more experience. So guys like Fraser Waitman and William Goldie Galloway, you know, they came away with losses tonight. But, you know, the Brits, Dunkirk spirit. You beat them once doesn't mean you've seen the last of them. They'll be back. They'll be back.
Yeah, the one thing that stood out for me, of course, was speaking to these fighters post-fight, was their reaction to be able to be on this Glory card. You know, they know how monumental it is, and Glory is the pinnacle of kickboxing around the world. So for them to come here and to be a part of that, I know how special it is for a lot of fighters here. But Georgiou, we're going to have to close up on that. Glory 54 Birmingham, it's been fantastic. It's been a good show, and who knows, there's rumblings that we could be back in the UK later this year. So we look forward to that, I guess.
Yeah, late third, early fourth quarter is what we're hearing.
That's what we're hearing from the Glory Inside guy. No, so thank you everybody for watching our Glory 54 post-event wrap-up. Stay tuned to Combat 365 for more Glory content.